Have you ever noticed how difficult it is to stop the scarcity mindset, to stop feeling like you don't have everything that you need, to stop scrolling when you know you shouldn't be anymore, you should probably go to bed, to stop watching Netflix, stop eating when you're already full? All of these things is hardwired in our brains, it turns out. For as long as I can remember, I've always felt like I'm behind. Despite the fact that I may achieve what I set out to achieve, I hit my goals, I still feel like I don't have enough, that I'm not doing enough. And after talking to many people, entrepreneurs, content creators, and just everyday people, I'm not alone. So the second I became a digital entrepreneur is when it really hit me. That feeling that no matter what I did, no matter what I achieved, I was behind. The thing that really caught me was things like Instagram, YouTube even, all of these things fed my business, and didn't matter if I got 1,000 views, 1 billion, I always felt like I was behind. Full transparency, I've never hit 1 billion views, but you get my point. Now for me, this goes way back. I mean, since I was an athlete, I used to wrestle and I was a professional MMA fighter. It was kind of trained innately in me to never be satisfied, to always go for the next thing. What I did not expect though, is that as I got to my 30s, that this would carry on, not just in sports, but also in my job, my entrepreneurial career, and even my relationships. So they call it the scarcity mindset, feeling like, again, you're always behind. But what's the solution? There was 2 books that came to mind. One that states the problem clearly and helps us realize why we have this feeling burned into us, hardwired in, encoded into our DNA to always feel like we need more. And also the solution, which I'll get to in a little bit with the gap in the gain. So you have The Scarcity Brain by Michael Easter, and then you have Gap in the Gain by Dan Sullivan and Dr. Benjamin Hardy. In this video, we're gonna do something kind of interesting. We're going to first identify why is it so dang hard to be happy with what we have, but also figure out maybe a solution, something that we could do to make sure that we realize that we have everything we need and maybe even be happy with what we have. Wifey's resting up today, so we gotta take this conversation on the road so we don't wake her up. Poor girl has to hear me talk all day. So first up, let's talk about the scarcity brain. So Michael Easter, he famously wrote Comfort Crisis, which if you haven't read, absolutely need to. It's a phenomenal book. But he just recently came out with the scarcity brain. He was featured on the Joe Rogan Experience, and that's how ultimately I discovered he even came out with a new book. In this book though, he details out, again, that we're hardwired to always feel like we're behind. And it makes total sense if you really think about it. Like, go back to when we were cavemen and women, right? And we had to have this feeling of always striving for more, because that's how we actually lived. If we just accepted that we only had a few berries and a few, deers or whatever the hell they ate back then, we only had a little bit to go around and they just didn't do anything about it, well, guess what? We would have starved off and died. So we had to constantly have this urge, this feeling like we don't have enough, so we can continue to go out and hunt. Now, fast forward a couple million years, we don't really have that problem anymore. We have abundance everywhere we look. Whether it's content, we can scroll for days on YouTube. Whether it's Instagram, same thing, we can scroll for days. Whether it's our food, we have more than we even know what to do with, but our brains are still hardwired to feel like we're behind. Now, there's people all over the place that's taking advantage of this cue, the scarcity cue he calls it, and employing the scarcity loop. The scarcity loop, he says, is as follows: opportunity, unpredictable results, easily repeatable. That's the scarcity loop. I'm not gonna lie, I really sometimes hate going in public doing this because these construction workers look at me like I'm an idiot, which, they're not wrong. Anyway, so to understand how some people, some major corporations are taking advantage of this, there's nowhere you need to look further than the casinos. Take a slot machine, for example. Why do they work so well? Well, before this guy named C. Red came along, people wouldn't really play them that much, right? The reason being is that they put in $10, only take like 2 turns, they lose everything. Now, this guy C. Red comes around and he starts to put in unpredictable results. They call them losses disguised as wins. This is when you may play the slot machine, you put in $10 and every once in a while you win 20 cents, you win $1 here, and it makes you continue to play. You never know what you're gonna get, unpredictable results, part of the scarcity loop. It kind of sounds like social media, doesn't it? Because if you think about it, you upload a piece of content. Why? Because there's a really good possibility you may get tons of views. Then you have unpredictable results. Sometimes you may get 100 views, sometimes 1,000. Then finally, you can do it again and again very quickly. The point is, as we, again, become entrepreneurs or content creators, whatever you are, you have this thing built into your head. Shut up, dog. You have this thing built into your head that says, hey, no matter what you do, it's never enough. And we have all these cues surrounding us that get us caught in this scarcity loop that makes us, again, feel like we need more, and we continue to scroll, continue to eat, all that fun stuff. But I figured there had to be a solution, something that we can maybe shift our mindset around so that way we can actually stop feeling like we're always behind.
Let's go. This is what should be playing in them Jeeps. Swimsuit girls at the pool, beach.
Honestly, my favorite thing about doing this, when you walk by somebody that's like a little bit older and they're like, what in the hell is that guy doing? Why does he have a camera pointing at his face, and why is he just talking to himself? Well, I'm educating a couple hundred people. That's what I'm doing. And this is where Gap in the Gain, Dan Sullivan, Dr. Benjamin Hardy come into play. And if you're wondering, yes, I have the camera sitting on a trash bin right now. Kind of gross. So let's talk about the Gap in the Gain. One of the biggest things that they address in this book is that we measure success wrong. And they say there's two ways that you can measure success. The first is called the gap. Perfect analogy they give is, imagine when you're walking, you're looking towards the horizon, and it feels like where the road meets the sky just keeps pushing back. It goes farther and farther and farther, and you never feel like you can make it there. That's ultimately what our goals are like. I think a really good example, again, going back to being an entrepreneur, we set a goal saying we want to make 6 figures or 7 figures, whatever that dollar amount is for you. But when you get there, we all know that you're going to end up pushing that goal back anyway. Again, there's two ways that you can measure success. The first is the gap. That's when you measure based on where you want to go and where you want to be. It's the ideal. You measure against where am I today and where should I be, quote unquote should. That magical number that doesn't actually exist, that magical place that maybe you will never hit. So we always feel like we're behind because our goals continue to move and move forward. Now, the other way to measure, and this is where the solution to the scarcity brain comes into play, you measure based on where you've been, not where you're trying to go. So if gap thinking is measuring based on where you think you should be, then gain thinking is measuring how far you've actually come, looking backwards and realizing how far you've come. Maybe instead of looking at, man, I wanted 1 million views, but I only got 1,000, realizing that last time you posted, you only got 100. That's a huge gain. And not to mention too, you've learned a lot of lessons along the way. Take business, for example. Your goal is to hit 6 figures, but instead of waiting until you get there and realizing you're still behind and pushing that number back even further, you take a look at maybe last month, month over month, how much growth you've had, or maybe even too, how much you've actually learned. So for the parents out there, one of the things that he brings up, Dr. Benjamin Hardy brings up about his own kids, is that it's easy to get caught up in the gap thinking even with our kids. Man, you should be getting A's, you should be doing this, and you get upset based on that outcome. But instead, taking a look at it and going, well, last semester, maybe they got a B, this time they got a B plus, right? Or they were better at doing their homework this time. And so there's always something to look at and say, man, they're really going a lot further. And then by rewarding them, giving them those affirmations saying, hey, look how far you've come, they'll be a little bit more motivated to continue. The gain thinking allows us to continually have more motivation and to strive for more, whereas your gap thinking, right, it's gonna make you feel like, why am I even doing this in the first place? So in the end, the thing that I've kind of realized was this. In order to get out of that scarcity mindset, in order to stop feeling like you're always behind, we have to measure success a lot differently. We have to start looking at, instead of where we think we should be in life, where we should be with our business, our families, or whatever, look at reality, where we are today, look at where we've been. You'll always be in the gain, and finally get out of the scarcity loop, and maybe even tap into that abundance mindset everyone likes to talk about. That being said, that's it for today. If you enjoyed this conversation, do me a huge favor. 1, leave a like and subscribe so that we can continue to get this kind of lessons. Also 2, leave a comment. Let me know what times in your life have you felt like you're behind. And do you think measuring differently, having tools like the gap in the gain, finally get out of that scarcity mindset and one of abundance? Leave your comments, leave your thoughts below. Even if you're like, Raylen, none of this is actually gonna help me. I always feel like I'm behind. I wanna know that too. So that being said, thank you for watching, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.